Hello, 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 beautiful people. I am so excited to be back with you here today. For those of you who have been riding with me for a long time, welcome back. I'm excited to have you. And for those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. I love that for you, and I love it for me too. For those of you who I have not gotten to be able to connect with in the past, I'm Leah Murphy. I am the CEO and founder of Career Gems for the Journey, where we help professionals build thriving careers. And I always say this, I have to live in my authentic truth. I get so excited once I get going. So I need to do all of my housekeeping up front so that when I get into these fire guests, and I'm talking about fire guests that are coming on, the work is done and we can just have an amazing conversation that you guys all get to participate in. So first, I just wanted to make sure that I told everyone the newsletter, Gems for Your Journey newsletter, is still available for you to sign up for. When I tell you that the feedback for the newsletter has been so exciting and so heartwarming, we have gone to all the corners of the internet and of our repository of career tools and brought that together for you into the newsletter. So you don't have to do the work. You don't have to search for articles. You don't have to search for tools. We have built it all and put it directly in the newsletter, and then we will deliver it to your inbox once a month. It is an amazing resource that you can have. All you have to do is head over to gemsforthejourney.org, sign up for the newsletter, and you're done. It'll be directly in your inbox. And I'm telling you, it's been a phenomenal resource for folks, and I've already gotten such great feedback. So go ahead and take advantage of that. Now, you guys know we have been on our Triumph Together Challenge mission. So last week, I had the talented Glennis Swan with me as my co-author of Triumph in the Trenches, Navigating Success for Black Professionals. Glennis and I had a great conversation. Though my internet was a little ghetto, I will acknowledge that it was a little ghetto because I was out of town. I was traveling for a conference and thought I was going to be able to navigate, hotspot Wi-Fi. It wasn't true. But Glennis killed it. She was phenomenal. So take an opportunity to go back and listen to the live. We've edited it down. So all of the part where the internet got a little bit sketchy, we took that out for you, cleaned it up. And it is a 20 plus minute episode. So it's quick, very digestible. And I want to make sure you all take advantage and have that opportunity to watch that or to listen to that. For those of you who are watching us live, joining us on LinkedIn Live or joining us on YouTube, great. We're so happy to have you. And then all of those who listen on the replay, like I always say, I love that for you and I love it for me too. So if you are here and you are listening to us live, drop your city in the chat. I will definitely be able to shout you out and acknowledge you once we get into the mix of it. So just put your name in the chat because where we're streaming live to does kind of filter through, and we're streaming live from a couple of platforms. So if you drop your name and your city in the chat, I will absolutely be able to shout you out. I see there's somebody over there already who's saying hi to me. Hi, please let me know what your name is. I love that you're here with me live. I appreciate you joining. And we're going to get right into the content for today. So I have two amazing, not one, but two amazing guests who are going to join me on this live experience. And they are my co-authors from the Triumph in the Trenches anthology. And I know that you may be thinking, okay, we heard from one co-author last week. We're going to hear from as many co-authors as possible, mostly because this Triumph in the Trenches, this Triumph Together challenge is really designed so that you understand kind of that text that's in the book, like the context, the stories behind it, the perspective, the leaders and thought leaders who were a part of this collaboration. I want you to know them because I've already been inspired by them. So today we have Coach Zena Barnes, who's joining us live, and we also have Dr. Hamaria Crockett. So we are welcoming both of them to the stage. Awesome. And Glennis is actually joining us from Dallas, Texas. So welcome, Glennis. We're excited that you're here with us. So technically, you guys are getting 4 authors in this because Glennis was with us last week, and I'm sure she'll have some great comments because we've all just been inspired by each other. So I'm going to jump right in and just ask the quick question. First, I'm going to read your titles for the chapters because I think that's enough to kind of get us started. So Coach Zena, your chapter is Authentic Self-Expression as an Act of Revolution Against Oppressive Norms.
Yes.
Ooh, the title alone really does set us on a trajectory of like, okay, there's some real depth that's going to happen here. And then Dr. Hamaria, your title is Soul Restoration, Healing from Workplace Trauma. So man, y'all went right for it in the title. Smart women, right? Like really pushing, right? Pushing us to like not get comfortable and not get cute. Let's not have it be super rosy. Let's have it be rich and in depth. So I'm gonna start with you, Coach Barnes. Tell me just a little bit about what was your motivation to participate in this anthology and to contribute this chapter. What was kind of behind that experience for you?
So behind the experience for me, first let me say thank you so much for having me. This is amazing and it's so much needed, and the time is now. So I definitely needed to acknowledge and say that. So kudos to you for this platform. Um, Again, back to your question, the for me it was just recognizing right now we're in a world that's divided, and often women, and it's not only women of color, but like often women are used as the martyr when it comes to in workplace trauma or whatever's going on in the behind the scenes of the workplace. But then when we bring it back to women of color, our ideas are often stolen. Our voices are often muted, and then people come to us as if they know us better than we know ourselves. So you have that term, show up as your authentic self. And it's like, who are you to determine what my authentic self is? And why should I give you that access?
Oh, okay. So you said martyr, you said authentic, right? You said so many things, and I'm gonna come back and kind of take an opportunity to take a deeper bite into each one of them. But I wanted to just give an opportunity for Dr. Hamaria Crockett to talk about her chapter and kind of what brought her to participating in the anthology and then writing these chapters. And I've read both of your chapters. It's a lot of very personal
Mhm.
lived experience that are in these chapters. So, Dr. Hamaria, tell me just a little bit about what drew you to this opportunity and what caused you to write Soul Restoration Healing from Workplace Trauma.
Yeah, I actually had just kind of come out of a pretty toxic work environment, and it had been a while since I had dealt with internal oppression. So, from another person of color towards me, and it was just seemed like the perfect time and the perfect moment to be able to kind of share this story. And as I was kind of talking to my friends about doing this anthology when it first kind of bubbled up, I was thinking, well, maybe I'm not really sure, but I realized that a lot of people have been in my shoes, that they had dealt with a lot of internal oppression, that they had dealt with people of color, kind of the same thing like what Dr. Zena or Coach Zena said, is that basically saying, hey, oh, if you work harder, if you do this or if you do that, or trying to put you in a particular box, or them perceiving you in a particular way, and it's from their own perspective versus from your own. That's really what kind of made this a soul restoration for me, and to also make sure that I able to share that with multitude of people, that this is something that happens more often than we really want to talk about sometimes.
So I think what you guys have both uncovered in your chapter and just in your brief description is this is a lived experience navigating workplaces as a whole, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's corporate America, whether it
Mhm.
is academia, right? Any range of workplaces. There are stories that are happening behind the walls of those organizations that are not being shared. And this anthology helps to give voice to people who maybe don't have the words themselves or aren't in a place where they're ready to tell their own story. It certainly lets them know that they're not alone in these experiences, or it lets them know, all right, I'm navigating this. Maybe we can get to the point where there are some strategies, and you guys talk about how you were able to navigate those environments, how you were able to overcome what you experienced. And you know what? Even if there isn't a how, even if we don't have the strategies ready yet, but I know y'all both do. So I'm just gonna give you this. I know you both do. So, but even if you don't have it, I think a lot of times we just need to know we're not alone in this experience.
Mhm.
Sometimes in the workplace, you are the only or the first or one of the few, and you can start to tell yourself the story of like, I'm tripping, I'm crazy, I'm overreacting. And I think this anthology did a great job of saying, no, 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 right? There's a problem here, and we're going to figure out giving acknowledgement that there is a problem first before we even get into the solution. So I'm really grateful for that. So Coach Zena, when you said Why would I give you the privilege of access to my, and I'm paraphrasing, to my
Mm-hmm.
most authentic self? The bell rung so loud for me inside because I think there is constantly a navigation of boundaries
Mm-hmm.
as we are in these workplaces and as we are, giving what is value to these organizations. Does that mean that they then have access to us? And a lot of times we'll hear, and I'd love to hear your perspective, well, people have to get to know you in order for you to get promoted, in order for you to get this next opportunity, in order for you to get that great next assignment. People have to know you. But how does giving access and people knowing you kind of create risk for the individual? Because you talk about it in your chapter. So just tell me a little bit more about that boundary that folks are challenging um, in today's. We have to get to know you in order for you to grow in this organization.
That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked that. So the reality is, people get conflicted between um, my professional authentic self versus my personal authentic self. You need to get to know me professionally. You don't need to get to know me personally. I will not have to share my personal, self guarded, peaceful mindset and spirituality with you. That is for the people who are, that's for my inner circle. That's for my loved ones. That's for my friends. Now, I do show up professionally and I give you my best professional self so I can get the job done. I can be transformative. I can be a team player. I can execute soft skills and all of those things. But that does not mean you then have access to my personal, because you should not be evaluating me on my personal. You should be evaluating me on my professional, because that's what I'm getting paid for. I'm not getting paid for my personal.
So it sounds like, and I love that. I love that you drew the line, right? There's a personal and a professional, because a lot of what is recommended today is to blur all the lines and everything goes everywhere, put it all in the pot and stir it up. And I heard a quote, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it was, I advocate for a more professional alignment with your coworkers so that when things are not a good fit, you feel safe enough to not feel obligated to do something that's not in your best interest as a person.
Mm.
Because companies are going to do what's in their best interest all the time, right? Their bottom line is their priority, and they're not apologetic about it. But in somewhere in this path, we begin to be coached or advised to be apologetic about doing what's in our best interest as people. And I think a lot of people are grappling with that now because they don't have those boundaries set up, and they feel like people are pushing into an area where they don't want them to be. And when I say people, I mean managers or leaders in their organization, coworkers, peers, cross-functional partners, but they don't know how to appropriately push back, or they don't know how to say no or correct that behavior. So I love that you said my personal life belongs to me, and that's private, and that's, sacred, is probably a word
Mm-hmm.
that we could also use. But my
Right.
professional life, sure, you want to look at the data, you want to look at the reports, you want to know, previous work history, have at it, right? I can be very transparent in that regard, but it doesn't mean that all parts of my life deserve that same level of access. So
And
thank you for
before, and I just wanted to jump in and piggyback on that, because in my chapter I go into the why, right? And the why is really rooted in your company is going to have a handbook, right? All companies, they have a handbook, and that's where they fall back on when things get rough, and when they want to write you up and they go, well, according to the professional handbook, blah 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 blah, right? The corporate handbook, the policy, whatever, non for profit, whatever organization you work for. What you need to have is your own personal handbook. You need to have your handbook of your moral compass, what you're willing to allow, the boundaries that you're not willing to allow to be crossed, and align it with the handbook so that you are protected. Because when you blur those lines and those boundaries of, well, they want to get to know me personally, and you're thinking that you're doing this from a place of, oh, I'm probably going to get this promotion if I allow them to seep into my sacred space, and then when it works for them, they use it against you. You know, they say, well, you know, we know that you're going through so much in your life right now because you shared this personal thing. So that's why you can't get this promotion. Well, you know, we know that you have to leave early on certain days because you have to pick up your child or your children from school. So we can't allow you to have the, you know, this. We'll find something else for you. So you've done all the work. You've executed the projects. You've spoken up for the company. You've done all these things, but it's those personal things that are holding you back. So you need to be mindful of how much access you give people to that sacred part of you so that it's not then held against you when it's your turn or when it's their turn to prove their worth to you. Because this should be a bi-directional relationship. It should be running in parallels. It should not be I'm giving, 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 and I'm never receiving.
Oh my gosh. So I absolutely love that. I love the handbook. I love writing your own personal handbook. I
So
see
dope.
Dr. Maria is like
Yes.
nodding her head
Like,
in
oh my
violent
gosh,
agreement to
you
Jessica.
have
What
to
did you
forgive
want to
me
share?
because authenticity is this what my dissertation was about. So I love all things pertaining to authenticity. And Coach Zena, you have said it, and I think, and in kind of conjunction to that, not only do you have to protect yourself, you have to protect yourself from the idea of your own internal imposter, because what ends up happening is that when you're talking about the things about, creating your own handbook or making sure that you're actually doing the work, what research actually shares with us is that people get promoted because they're liked.
Mm-hmm.
And the unfortunate part is that in our mindset, especially as people of color, it's almost this thing is if I work harder, I'll be promoted. But generally, it's because people are liked. It's not necessarily how much work you do. And when I talk about in my chapter, is that I actually had an African American supervisor, and she told me that I needed to be seen and not heard because I was too likable. So she had in her mindset that it can only be one. It only can
Mm-hmm.
be one person of color that can be promoted or that can be seen or that can be out there. And that, I think that is so important, just like the conjunction between the two ideas is that if you don't protect your own self, if you don't protect like who you are and who your true self is, you talked about Leah blurring the lines. Everyone else will blur plenty of lines. If you don't have in yourself of who you really are, then it becomes very difficult for you to then take your work self home. And I don't know about you, but like I'm a TT, I'm a wife, I don't want to be corporate Hamaria at home. I don't want to be
Right.
that. But what ends up happening is that where people have struggle and they deal with PTSD and they deal with all of these other issues is because unfortunately you haven't made that distinction. You
Mm-hmm.
haven't made that line and said, no, 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 no. I'm cool with having a corporate person or a nonprofit person, or this is my external to everyone else. But when I go home, I'm gonna be someone else. And if you don't protect that, that's when we see these crazy numbers of people dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety on medication because they don't have a balance.
And let's not forget the bullying. Let's not forget the
Oh yes.
suicide. And that's why I'm very like rooted in making sure we understand as women of color when show up as your authentic self is really being used as a microaggression.
It really is. You're right.
So, okay. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of, I want to talk about just this scenario that I think comes up really often,
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot of women who are a part of the audience for the LinkedIn Live and the YouTube. And I think what comes up often is this trying to be liked in environments, and that trying to be liked, which pushes them to put themselves in a position where they have to be in places with their peers outside of work, right? We talk about happy hours or events or offsite events that are not related to the workday. So I would love to hear your perspective or your advice as we navigate trying to give people a perspective of what does a boundary look like, right? What does a boundary look like? How do you define it? And then how do you support that boundary? So this example of, offsite events, happy hours, all those kinds of things comes up a lot. and people are trying to figure out, do I have to participate? Don't I have to participate? What if I don't really want to? So that's a boundary that I hear a lot from clients. So I would love to hear from you, Dr. Hamaria, first on how to navigate those kinds of, or what would your recommendation as you coach clients or as you build your own repertoire of expertise and you're sharing with people, what should they do in those scenarios so they don't feel like they are leaving the opportunity on the table, but at the same time they can protect their boundary? What do you recommend there?
That's so good. I love that question. So, one thing that I like to share with people in advance is an element of my personality. So I like to start layering that in when I am initially in a group. And this is the fact that I am an introvert, but I have extroverted tendencies. So for me, the question that you ask is that when people are like, oh, do you want to go here? You want to go there? You want to go here? I like to share with them a little part of myself, which is I'd love to be able to go to those things. And if I need to go, so like going to offsites and things like that, sometimes you just gotta go, right? Because it's a part of, the system. But I like to share with people is that if you see me quiet, then I need to personally recharge. So I give them an element of who I am so that when you know that I'm in these spaces, or if I am not there, it is because I have set the course already in place, that this is who I am. Now sometimes I don't want to go. And I can also say, oh, you know what? Because I'm just so drained. You know what I'm saying? Like use ways, but not necessarily excuses, but use ways and methods and terminologies so that you set some groundwork. One thing that I think people do is that they don't set that groundwork or they don't set those boundaries. And so it's just very stark when they say, oh, I don't want to go, or I don't really feel like going. And they're talking to their coworkers now like they're their homegirls, instead of making sure that you've put things in place so that you've established an element and an aspect of who you are. So that's what I do. Sometimes I just don't feel like going because, again, I really am an introvert and I need to recharge. So that's when I say, oh, I'll be retiring early because, oh, my battery is low. People generally understand those things, and whatever elements of your personality, putting that in the forefront is very helpful.
Okay. So I love the groundwork. I love the idea of putting in the forefront, telling people up front what potential boundaries they're going to come up against. I love that. I also like this idea of having a level of self awareness in advance so that you're self aware. You know you're an introvert. Networking events or those kinds of things drain you, and you can use that, then put it into language so that other people can understand and then be able to adopt. Right. A lot of times it's like you have a self awareness, but you're not using language that other people are going to be able to digest. So then they form their own opinions. And that's
Right.
when you get this cascade and this broader concern. So thank you for that. I love that. Lay the groundwork. Coach Zena, what would you add or build upon what Dr. Hamaria shared as far as how do you establish those boundaries or share those boundaries when you're invited to these additional outside of work type of activities that I hear so many women trying to figure out the best way to navigate?
So, well, I've been on both sides, right? I've been on the side of leadership, who've organized these forced joys. And that's what I like to call them, forced joys. And then I've also been on the side of an employee, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many of these things, and I don't want to miss out on because this might be my opportunity for whatever it is, a project lead, promotion, whatever. So, what I like to say is commit to maybe two. You can commit to two out of the year or however of the quarter, and you say like, well, I will commit to two different events that I'm willing to go to, and but that I'm always open to maybe having lunch with one-on-one colleagues, or maybe a group of us get together and we decide that we want to have lunch, and that's on our professional time, because I am very committed to my work life balance, and I'm very committed to ensuring that I have enough of me when I go home to share with my family. And when and when you're forced to go to these events, you come home. Sometimes you come home too tired. And if you have little ones, forget about it, right? So you come home, you too tired. You've been talking all day. You don't want to hear the people in your house talk because you've been talking all day. You've been hearing problems all day. You're gonna have time to problem solve at home, and then your family and your loved ones, the people who really need you, they get the worst of you, and that's not fair to them. So I would say commit to maybe two events, and then work with your colleagues to say, hey, maybe let's do lunch or something.
So
let's do lunch and we'll get to know each other that way, because you don't have to try to be a good person. You're either a good person or you're not a good person. So
ooh,
people will like you or they will not like you. I can show up for you and I can support you during the work hours, and you can still have a high level of like for me, rather than me going to buy you a drink at happy hour, and now we're just gossiping about what happened at the water cooler, and we're getting the stories of the ins and the outs and the behind of who like who and who doesn't. That's not us building a relationship.
so what I love about what both of you said at different parts of this conversation is preserving a part of yourself so that the people at home, and even if there are no people at home, even if you're a single person going home to the four walls of your house, but preserving something so that the version of you that goes home is still not completely depleted every single day, right?
Mhm.
And this is not us in any way eliminating or ignoring the fact that there will be highs and lows. There's days where there's a lot of
Right.
work to do and there's a lot going on, and there's more that's required of us, but there's also days where we have to figure out how do we preserve ourselves, and create that balance for ourselves, because only we know what our needs are and where we're at. But I love that you both said, like, save something for those of the people who are at home, or those save something for yourself when you leave work, because
Mhm.
work is not our entire life. And I just it may be safe to assume for some people, but I thought it was worth saying work is not our entire lives. Work is a huge dimension of our life because of lots of psychological reasons, and we could talk more about that in another conversation, because I feel like we have a lot to talk about. But work is not our entire life, and I just love that you guys are giving people permission, not that they need it, but you're granting them the permission to preserve parts of themselves so that they can enjoy themselves outside of work in addition to their life, because there's a lot of things that are happening in the workplace, and some of it is traumatic. It's not all good. It's
Mhm.
not all good. Some of it is very stressful. Some of it is very overwhelming. Some of it is having a negative impact on our mental health. So to figure out ways to preserve yourself is just in your best interest as a human. So
I just want to
I
jump in
want,
one thing, Leah,
go
and tell
ahead.
this quick story that I think will be, it's like mind blowing, but it really happened. So I was a senior level executive. I was in a meeting. I came in a little late, so they'd already, they kind of chat before meetings happen. So I was there, and the CEO of the one organization that I was a part of, he was saying, okay, yeah, yeah, we have this opening. We want to make sure that we hire a Black woman. And everyone in the group was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so great! Like that's so wonderful." And he was like, "Yeah, because they're going to work harder and they're going to do more, and we can pay them less." The reason why I bring that up is because, to Coach Zena's point and my point about work like integration, is the fact that that is a perceived of a multi-billion-dollar organization about women of color, is that that's why you've got to preserve who you are. Is
Mhm.
because, do you need to work the hardest, make the least, be the one that's exhausted and you don't have time externally to be able to do anything else? The weekend is just the time for you to rest and recuperate, for you to try it all over again. So I just think that story for me, it always is like, so then when I got off mute, I said, "I'm sorry, what was that?" He was like, "Oh, Maria, I didn't know you were on." And I heard you. But that is a perception. And I think that
Mhm.
the permission has to be where we do our jobs and not believe that more work means that we're more liked, or more work means that we're going to get promoted, or more work and more stress, more issues means that it's going to help us to excel to this magical corporate ladder. They're not one and the same.
They are not. Not only are they not one and the same, actually, one of my like the thing I beat the drum on the most is, if you are not adding value to the organization and then extracting value from the organization in the form of compensation, then you will be undervalued,
Yep.
overworked, and underpaid, right?
Mhm.
That's the outcome that happens when you're not extracting the same value, or a percentage of the value that you're adding into the organization, because businesses are never going to pay you for the sake of paying you, right? There is a value that you're creating. And I think us having a perception of, I'm a valuable asset to the organization by doing my job and contributing, by doing my job, not because I'm giving them unlimited access to me. That's actually just allowing a more risky relationship. We want to
Yep.
stay on a professional term such that we understand there's a mutual respect, but not that I am now suffering as a result of being a part of this organization.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, that your chapters had so much depth and meat into it. So I'm going to wind us down here, but there's one more question that I wanted for each of you before I ask you where folks can find you offline. Dr. Hamaria, so you talked in your chapter about what is often a taboo topic, right? And I was so glad that it came out because I think a lot of times we are trying to figure out how to dance around the topic of navigating workplaces where people perceive there could only be one, or people perceive, and sometimes that's just one Black person, sometimes it's
Exactly.
just one woman, sometimes that's just one of whatever your intersectionalities are. So I love that you brought it up, but I also know that there is some discomfort there. So talk to me a little bit about how you made what is a topic that is often uncomfortable the crux of your chapter, and why you thought that that was really important.
Yeah. Like I said, I was kind of coming out of a very toxic work environment, and I was like, "Oh, I know this is happening to other people. I know this. I'm not the only one." And I wanted to be able to bring voice to something that, like you said, really doesn't generally have a voice. We talk about all of the other kinds of things. We talk about, the toxic work environment, but sometimes we don't talk about the people that are creating the toxic work environment, because the environment within itself is just a room, it's just walls, it's just a Zoom. It's the people that work within these components, within these organizations, that create this toxic work environment. So within my chapter, I really dig deep into my own experience dealing with an African American supervisor, and just like her perception, and almost it took back. I even did like research, and it almost like it's like the idea of slavery, where you have like an overseer, and you had to kind of just be under that person's thumb, be under that person, so that they kind of dictated what they thought and they believed, that how far you can go and what you could do versus your own personal belief. And when I tell you, I had to get up out of there, because I realized that we were just misaligned. We were always going to be mismatched. And it was kind of like the crab in the barrel scenario, that no matter how well and how much I ascended, because I had a leader that was had this particular perception, I was only going to go where she perceived. And sometimes I think in our own professional growth and development, we have to understand sometimes the people around us, they're just not our people. They're just not the people that's going to help us to grow and to be really developed. And we have to start making really hard decisions. Like you said, are they, even if I'm contributing, am I actually receiving something other than a paycheck every 2 weeks? So
Mhm.
I realized that that paycheck every 2 weeks, even though I was making great money, it was not worth my peace. It was not worth me giving up elements of myself that I just wasn't going to give to corporate. So that I had to make the decision, I got to get it back here. So that's like an area, I was going to call it black on black crime, but I feel like that was a little too much. But it really felt like a crime against me as another person. It was really felt like, just like this person had this mentality that I just didn't have. And one other element that I'll add too is that she was grew up in the South. I grew up in the North. So it was even like cultural perspective. We were just kind of on different ends. And I just realized just the totality of people's mindset were just very different than me, where I kind of how I grew up, being an advocate for authenticity and just being true to yourself and all of these things. I said, oh no. So that's what I wrote about. And that was just kind of my own story. And yeah, I thought, I was like, ooh, they not going to accept my chapter because I'm over here exposing the black folks. But I
So
realized it's a bunch of us that have
oh,
had.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And there's Coach Zena, I have a question for you, but
Okay.
there's a comment that I constantly reiterate that I've learned through my own experience, and this is specifically as it relates to your supervisor. If you and your supervisor are misaligned and y'all aren't going to work, or it's not working, or you feel like there's natural resistance in that relationship, you either have to plan to get off that team or you got to plan to get out of that organization.
That's
But
right.
Mhm.
either way, you have to have a plan. You will not, in my experience and in all the coaching that I've done, you cannot overcome misalignment with your manager when it gets to the place that you're explaining, Dr. Maria.
Right.
So I'm glad you got up out of there. I'm glad you were able to navigate where else you needed to be because it brought you here to be with us today. So I am feeling really fortunate that you're here. And then Coach Zena. So at the end of your chapter, you write a whole list, a numbered list of things that are important, that when everyone
She
is
gave it to us,
valued
didn't
and
she?
can thrive, there's certain things that you have to remember. And the number one that, and I highlighted this, like y'all listen, like I wasn't playing. I don't know if y'all can see this, but I'm literally in my bed at night with a highlighter trying to get through these chapters. And there's so many just gems that got dropped. A peaceful work environment built on trust and respect makes people comfortable being themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me just a little bit about your perspective of where people can identify for themselves a workplace that isn't built on trust, right? So that when people can say this is not built on trust, it's not built on respect, so it gives me the permission to say I have to go elsewhere, I have to make a different choice for myself. I think a lot of times people struggle and grapple with, how do I know it's time for me to go, right? How do I
Mm-hmm.
know it's time for me to make a different choice for myself? So I would love to hear your perspective on how can folks identify a workplace that's not built on trust and respect so that they can then make a different plan for themselves.
I would say, and from experience, when people can continuously question your integrity, then that is not a place that is built on trust.
Mm,
And from for me, and that really that came from my own experience in the workforce where I was giving my all. When I say I was giving my all, I was coming home still working. I was making sure that I was like, okay, I'm making sure I'm meeting with parents, so that students could get back into school if they was on suspension. So I'm at home all 9 p.m. Holding parent meetings, and then I'm being questioned about why I'm doing what I'm doing. Am I trying to replace the principal? And it's like you're questioning my integrity, or you're questioning what I'm doing out of not only the love for the job, but also the well being of families and the well being of children. This is not a place that is meant for me to thrive. And so I had to make that decision of, do I stay here and continue to show up at a job that is no longer making me happy? See, the difference is I used to show up early for work all the time. I was happy. I loved my job. When I say I loved my job. And so I didn't mind sacrificing certain things because my vision was I wanted to be the type of leader that I wish I had.
mm-hmm.
And so I showed up for parents knowing that I too was a parent, so I know what it felt like to have to choose between, oh my God, I have to make sure I'm at work, but I also have to make sure I'm showing up for my child. I have to make sure that I'm showing up for parent teachers conference. I have to make sure I'm showing up for these meetings that only are constricted to happen in the time frames of from 8 to 3:30. But I also have work and I can't take off. So does that mean I love my child less? And so I wanted to be that person that would say, you know what, I'm going to meet you halfway, and we're going to schedule these meetings so that you don't have to choose between taking time off and showing up for your child. And so my
So
integrity began to get questioned from leadership of why I was doing what I was doing, because it was like no one else is doing it. And it's like, so you're questioning my integrity of who I can be as a leader because I'm not showing up being the leader that you had in your mindset of what this leader should look like. So I'm no longer meeting this cookie cutter format that you wanted. And I realized that a lot of people fall into that. And so I share this story to recognize, to highlight when your authenticity, not your authenticity, but when your integrity is being questioned because you're
yeah.
no longer fitting the mold, then you're not working in a place of trust.
So I thank you so much for that, because I think that is something that people can put through a filter, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
like to give people what I call go no go gauges, right? Like if you're gauging an environment and you're trying to figure out, is this off base? Am I misaligned? Is something happening? And then you can ask yourself a question: have I been questioned in a way that challenges my integrity, or is my integrity constantly being called into question in this environment? Okay, that lets me know I'm no longer operating in a place where I am respected and trusted. And then that
Mm-hmm.
gives people the freedom, right, to choose something that is better for themselves. So I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for that. And you guys, y'all showed out. Y'all done came on here and showed all the way out. And I love it. I absolutely love it. This anthology has been such an eye-opening experience for me, and it's pushed me so far out of my comfort zone. But what has done more than any of those things is connected me to a group of people who are, capable, talented, bright, experts in their own independent rights, whether it's in nonprofit leadership, academia, corporate America, government, employees, all of the things. So it's just been so enlightening for me. I've learned a lot throughout reading the book personally, as well as contributing. So I know that there's something that is really great for everybody who is here today in the audience, who is listening. And whether or not you are a Black professional who's trying to navigate triumphing in the trenches, or whether you are an ally or a leader in an organization and you're trying to figure out, how do I get a better sense of what's happening in my organization? Because none of us have worked at the same place. So we can bring stories and examples from different organizations, from different cities across the US, and some of us internationally, and these examples are still relevant. So thank you guys so much for joining me here today on the LinkedIn Live. This has literally been amazing. If folks are looking to find you or want to connect with you, specifically whether it's to source some of your services or just to get more dope content and more expertise that you shared today, I'd love to hear where they can find you. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Hamaria, and then close with you, Coach Zena.
Well, everything I'm a part of says Dr. Hamaria. So if you look under LinkedIn, it's Dr. Hamaria. I just got on TikTok. In my mind, I went viral. I had 15,000 views. I thought I was fancy. YouTube, Medium, hello at drhamaria.com if you want to email me directly. So anything you need, if you type in whatever and Dr. Hamaria, I'll show up.
Awesome. And Coach Zena, where can they find you?
Same here, all platforms. You may see Rev in front of the coach because I go between both Rev and Coach Barnes. And I am on all social media platforms as well. You can also go to my website, which is www.xenia, XENIA, Barnes, like the bookstore.com. And then you can, on there, you can get a lot of different gems and I learned a lot about psychological safety in the workplace.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here with me today for this part 2 of the Triumph Together Challenge. We are just scratching the surface. This was chapter 3 and 4, and you guys really showed out today. I appreciate that. And I feel like there's another conversation here. I don't know what it's going to be, but there's another conversation here. And I will let you guys know, everybody who is watching us live or listening to this on the replay. For everybody who dropped in and dropped their city in the chat, it looks like we had a good amount happening here in the comments, and I got distracted. See, I told you up front, I'll be doing my best to try to read the comments, but I get so into the conversation. So there were some folks who, dropped comments, facts, excellent comparison. These things happen way too often. So it looks like folks, what you were sharing was really resonating with those who are in the audience. So I'm glad to hear it. So join us next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be back here to go through chapters 5 and 6. And if you guys we've been through 4 chapters and there have been gems left and right that get dropped every time you join us live. So come back and join us again for chapter 5 and 6. We'll be really excited to see you there next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on LinkedIn Live. It has been a pleasure being with you all today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.